All right, starting the show today with Roseanne Barr, Michael Moore, and the Donald going to a bar. No, they're not in the bar, but they're having a conversation. Let's take a listen.
You know that whole way of thinking gets all bogged down too, and it doesn't go anywhere either.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, witness the whole Soviet Union.
Sure.
It doesn't go anywhere. I'm not calling you a communist.
No.
But that socialist stuff, it doesn't go anywhere. Yeah. It's just a...
All right, folks, this is from 1998, and this is, I guess it's the Roseanne Barr show or something. I don't know. Michael Moore and Donald Trump are on it. Welcome to GAMcast for, August 1st, 2023. Yes, I am behind the Yeti today. The case did settle. I didn't think it would. I normally can put my hand on the pulse pretty good with these things. I really didn't think it would settle, but it did, which means I'm happy about that because I got a lot of things to do. And anyway, so I'm also able to do the podcast, which is going to be, I had to prepare kind of even in a quicker fashion than I normally do, but even faster today. So we're going to go through this bit, and I think a lot of things I want to talk about. This was in Poso's feed. Very, very good commentator, good follow on Twitter. I recommend at Jack Posobiec, Posobiec. We're going to talk about the Supreme Court again, and I'm going to continue to explain to you just how baseless their lies are these days. I mean, everything, unless it's abortion, and even abortion's a large lie, but abortion is probably the only thing they're just not like outright lying about. Everything else is completely manufactured, fabricated, and normally the opposite. So we're going to talk about Devon Archer. Look, folks, there's so much evidence of Biden's corruption, and I mean Hunter, I mean Joe, I mean everybody. It's a joke. But we're going to go through those lies, bring you up to speed on that. We're going to talk a little bit about Fani Willis's case, what that could mean, because there's something out there I think a lot of people are not thinking about. I don't think it's going to come to fruition, but it might. So you want to stick around for that. And then just a couple other 2 or 3 things going on that popped up in my feed I thought were interesting, and I think you'll find interesting too, and you need to know. Again, make sure you know all the news you need to know in hopefully under an hour today. And I think it'd probably be right around 40 minutes, but we shall see. So, all right, we start off, they start talking about communism, socialism, bad. Now, this was back in, again, 1998, and we were well on our way to getting there because we were well on our way. If you'll recall, Clinton won the election of 1992, which he had no business winning, but he did. And Bill Clinton brought a lot of things that were somewhat good to politics, but he brought one bad thing, and one hugely bad thing. Clinton was the master of the narrative. He would make the most absurd statements and then not back away. So one of the ones I remember he said back was, "It's the worst economy, since the Great Depression." And you're sitting there going, what? It's a mild recession. What in the world? Companies like Sears is going out of business. Like, well, Sears is going out of business because of this thing called Walmart. Walmart has come on the scene and is undercutting them, and they've got an old model that, frankly, that's why you have capitalism. So the old model gets, shifted away to sea like a sandcastle that the water comes and takes it back out. The sand hasn't gone anywhere. It's just been put in a new place, and somebody can make another different thing with it, right? I mean, we like this. Like, one of the things that always bothers me, I see this, and there's nothing you can do. The ship has sailed. But you'll see some company, I think the yellow trucking company went out of business, and people are like, oh, my God, there's 20,000 jobs gone. They're not gone. They're going somewhere else. Right, those people are going to, that in a capitalist economy, like the trucks will be bought, right? Those trucks will be put to use. The people that drove those trucks will be driving them for someone else, maybe for Amazon, maybe for UPS or FedEx or what, I don't know. But this idea that a company going into bankruptcy is an absolute disaster, not in capitalism, right? The people that had that money weren't putting the money and those materials to good use. Now they're being put to a better use, right? And so anyway, this is sort of. Again, back in the day, it's 2 years before Clinton is going, actually 3, I guess, before Clinton is going to retire from the scene. But he created that idea that you could start a narrative. And the media during that cycle, that 2-year term that he served under, started to openly be Democrat. I mean, just openly. And he could say the craziest things. Well, it depends on what the definition of is. And he would literally look in the camera. I did not have sex with that woman, not one time, not ever. And then later it'd be revealed that he completely lied, that he did have sex with her, right? I mean, I don't want to get into the whole Clinton thing again, but that was the beginning. That was the start of it. I'm not saying the media wasn't biased before then, they were. But there was rules. Now, one of the other things that happened when Clinton began to idiofy the political discourse, and you absolutely can trace it to right there, okay, where, yeah, they'd always been biased. Yeah, they were worth 2 or 3 points to the Democrats every single election. But they wouldn't just sit there and listen to you say you didn't have sex with that woman ever. Turns out you did, but you weren't lying, right? I mean, even then it's like, come on now. I mean, you need to come clean on the fact you lied to us. I mean, we still going to vote for you, man. I ain't voting for the Republicans, I know that. But come on now. You lied, and come on, admit it and move on. Anyway, so by the time you get to Obama, right, I mean, it's just, again, on steroids. I mean, what Clinton would basically, they'd kind of rib him a little bit. The Obama, they wouldn't even look twice. But what is the other thing that happened? People like Roseanne Barr and people like Michael Moore who need to be, and again, I understand Roseanne Barr is a quote-unquote conservative, whatever that means. I don't care for her being in politics, right? Because politics needs to go back to policies. And the next story, we're going to cover the Supreme Court, and I'm going to walk you through the Democrat arguments against my argument that they have no power to regulate the court. And I want you to hear what they have to say, because I want to hear that. I'm going to give them a fair reading of what they have to say, backs up their point. And it's a joke. It's idiocy. I mean, pure idiocy, which tells you they're lying, right? Well, how did we get to that point? One of the ways we got to this point is we invited celebrities. And I'm not saying, I understand celebrities always had something to say. Yeah, I've been going way back. I mean, talking, 1960s, Frank Sinatra was campaigning for, Jack Kennedy, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm talking about literally people going to celebrities and literally taking and wanting them. And then people like Whoopi Goldberg. What is she doing on The View, right? What is Joey Bates? She's a comedian. What is she doing on The View, right? I mean, it's almost as bad or worse than going to get the White House secretary of the current administration to set up a news program. I mean, you've got to be kidding me. That's well, anyway, I digress. Anyway, this is something that happened, is that you started to get celebrities involved in politics, comedians involved in politics. What do? They entertain. They're entertainers. That's what they always are. That's what they always will be. So what do you think they're going to give you? They're going to give you entertainment. They're not going to give you politics. And the more you get, the more idiotified you get. And pretty soon, you're where we are now, where, if you're not listening to every single solitary source out there, or a source like this, you have no idea what's going on. That'll become very apparent when we get to the Devon Archer testimony and the Biden crime regime. Anyway, a little bit more of this, which I thought was amusing. One more bit here. And again, you'll see Michael Moore say something that is complete nonsense, completely just doesn't make any logical sense at all. But, again, this is the beginning of I can just say whatever I want. Up is down, down is up, black is white, etc.
Mess like everything else.
Here's the ironic thing is that the socialist Soviet thing is what now conservatives in this country like. They want to eliminate the competition. They want to merge and buy out the competition so that they're the only company, right? So we have only like 5 media.
I was thinking that. Is that true, Donald? I was thinking that the rich people are trying to make us communists.
They're trying to be like the old Soviet Union. How about this? When the Republicans voted for impeachment, they voted 227 to 0. Not one dissent, like the old Politburo in the Soviet Union.
See, it's like the old Politburo. It couldn't be that those 227 people all agreed Clinton lied. No, it couldn't be that. It's the Politburo. If you got uniformity about something, why, it's the Politburo. It's the commies. And they're going to bring back the Pravda. Okay, yeah. Well, flash forward today. When Nancy Pelosi was in charge of the House, and now that Chuck Schumer is in charge of the Senate, you see a lot of dissent there? Huh, that's weird. Anyway, I could go on with that bit, but I want to move on to other things. I just thought it was interesting. It came from my feed. So here we go, folks. This is Larry Tribe. If you're watching on YouTube, Twitter, or later Rumble. And by the way, Rumble, thanks for the likes. Keep those up. If you're on YouTube, please subscribe, like us as well. It would help us out. Anyway, so getting back to the point, I covered yesterday what is going on. So there's a bunch of things going on with respect to the Supreme Court. First and foremost, the idea that the Supreme Court is corrupt branch is a joke. Right now, honest answer, it's by far, not even close, the most pristine branch of government we have. By far. In a rational society, the Supreme Court would have an approval rating in the 80s or 90s. Especially as it relates to the type of body it is. The fact that it has low ratings is only because people lie about it. It's obvious why they're lying. It's the only branch they only moderately control, and it pisses them off. It's just that simple. Sorry to just be, but that's just what it is. All right, so what do they want to do? They want to attack it, right? Now, they floated packing it, right? We're going to move it from 9 to 13. That gives us 4. We now go 7 to 6, and we win, right? But that's for whatever reason, that has not caught on with the public. Option number 2, they could impeach. It's a near impossibility. Can't do it because you're not going to get a third of the Republican caucus to agree with all of the Democrats. Think about how scary that flipping is, by the way. That if they don't control the House, which is another problem, but let's assume for the sake they take the House in 2024, they bring up articles of impeachment against Thomas, and then they vote to impeach, which, as you know, because Democrats, they uniformly impeach, I don't believe anybody dissented in either case, to impeach Trump, so they can impeach him, goes to the Senate, all the Democrats would vote yes. Think about that. I mean, really? I mean, you would sit there and think there'd be a few decent ones. Well, I don't know. Maybe you wouldn't get Manchin. Maybe you wouldn't get Sinema. Who knows? But anyway, they'd get most of them, and it will all be a question if you can get a third of the Republican herd to break off. I don't think you can. So what do you need now? Since impeachment is really the only thing you can do, well, let's try to regulate them. And then we can go and say, well, you violated this law. And by the way, so for example, in the Boxes hoax, they're claiming that Trump has no right to these documents. I've already told you he has rights to them. This is all garbage. I've already told you they have no right to even regulate those documents. It's all garbage. But just set that aside for the sake of the argument, right? You accidentally had some documents. You didn't give them back. Don't believe that, well, if you'd have given them back, oh, so that's how it works. If I murder somebody, but I come clean about it when you ask me, then the murder goes away. That's not how the law works, and they know it. It's all just nonsense. But let's assume for the sake of the argument that you should have crime. 20 years? There are states in this union you don't get 20 years for rape or murder. But oh my God, don't you dare interrupt a congressional proceeding. Oh my God, don't you dare defy a congressional subpoena. Oh my God, don't you dare have a document that we didn't think you should have, even though you're the President of the United States and you were the Commander-in-Chief of the executive branch. 20 years. What does that tell you, folks? It tells you that it's an authoritarian criminal regime. This is a joke. And don't believe me, go back and do some Google on your own and look at what people used to get back in the 70s and 80s when we were more rational. Anyway, here's Lawrence Tribe. I've told you who Lawrence Tribe is. He's like a god to these people. He's a step below Ruth and Obama and Oprah, but he's kind of in the B category there and high up on it. And he's the one, he knows all about the Constitution. And there's a whole literally a whole ecosystem of these people that have some credibility because, and I don't know, and this is what I don't know now. If you'd have asked me even 5-6 years ago, is Lawrence Tribe a scholar? I said, oh, sure, he's a scholar. I mean, I disagree with him, but yeah, I mean, he worked hard. I mean, wrote a book. I mean, for God's sakes, I mean, it's got to take some effort to write a book. And he graduated from law school, and they didn't just put anybody in charge. I mean, I would have believed he had some credibility. He did some things. Now, I honestly don't know. I really don't. Now, another one is Paul Krugman, who won a Nobel Prize for the economy, and he's just like Lawrence Tribe. Republicans are communists and terrible, never have a point, and the Democrats, they can do no wrong. And they don't even care about being remotely honest about it. And now I don't know if it's because they never had the credentials I thought they did, or which is what I used to think, which is, yeah, they had the credentials, but to them, the team, the move towards fascism and communism, or whatever you want to call it, where we tell you what you do. You take this shot. You stand 6 feet away. You give me your money. I will spend it however I please. We will live like kings. You will live like plebes. That whole crowd. It's just so important that we do that I'm willing to bend the way things work. So this was going to be in the show yesterday and just had a bunch of things, so it had to get to the bottom. But here's what I want you to understand. So here's Lawrence Tribe, okay, responding to Justice Alito, saying it's controversial, which it's not. The Republicans are just so bad at this sometimes. It's not controversial, but they have no authority to regulate us, period. That's more or less what he said. And he's absolutely right. Absolutely right. Does that mean they're above the law? No, they can be impeached. And if they're doing the things they've been accused to do, they should be, which tells you they aren't, because they would have been if they had. Anyway, here we go. Ready? The power of Congress to regulate non-judicial conduct of Article 3 judges, which they are. Article 3 is the creation of the Supreme Court and the other courts, including Supreme Court justices, is grounded in the Constitution's necessary and proper cause, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18. Now, here's what we're going to do. Well, we always do this in Great American Mail. I have, for your convenience, pulled up said Section 8 of Article 1. Now, let's scroll all the way down to 18. And you will see, because I'm not fooling you if you're watching it, if you're listening to it on podcast, very simple. Just type that in. It's such a famous clause to lawyers. You can type in necessary and proper clause in Google. It'll come right up. If you want to put in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18, it'll come up. Whatever you want to do, it'll come up. And I'm going to read it. To make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers, and all other powers vested in this Constitution in the government of the United States or in any department or officer thereof. I'm going to read that again. To make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution of the foregoing powers. Now, I'm assuming you speak English, and I'm assuming you have an IQ that's in the triple digits. Therefore, I must look to the prior 17, right, foregoing powers to determine that I can make laws necessary and proper to carry them out. So let's do that, right? Let's act like we're in law school and this would be probably a couple of months in, honestly, believe it or not, into the constitutional law class. But here we go. The Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, to pay the debts, and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States, right? All right, so that's clause number 1. They can do that. Then you scroll down to 18, and they can make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying out that duty. To wit, right, the Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes. You need to build a building so you can collect taxes. You need to hire some clerks so you can pay taxes. Got to get some calculators. All that sounds necessary and proper to me to carry out that function. Bingo, right? So it doesn't act in and of itself. All right, to borrow money on the credit of the United States. Okay, you need to make a law. It's necessary and proper to carry out that duty? Sure. To regulate the commerce with the foreign nations and among the several states and with the Indian tribes. Wonder why it doesn't say Native American. I digress. Okay, you can make all laws necessary and proper to do that. Folks, the point is, tribe just lied to you. No. I'm not going to read them all because we've got to move on. I can tell you right now, okay, nowhere in here does it say that to regulate the ethical conduct and recusal of the Supreme Court. It doesn't say that. None of the first 17 even talk about the Supreme Court. You know why? Because Supreme Court's covered in the next article. Anyway, so that's him. That's the best they got. He is the king of all kings. But they weren't just done there, right? So anyway, so here's an article in the Washington Post by Ruth Marcus. She's one of these people, again, just whatever the Republicans say, they're wrong, and this is all terrible. Here's what she has to say, right? All right, so it's almost as if the court could use an ethics code, which brings us to Alito's, quote, controversial view. Wish she hadn't said that Congress has no authority here. Now, here's her quote. All right, this is again in the Washington Compost. This is supposedly a great paper that's only going to tell you facts. Taken literally, that statement is nonsense. Ilya Simon, law professor at the Antonin Scalia, God, that makes me roll over. When I have my grave, I'll be rolling over about this, that they've named a law school after Antonin Scalia, and this woman's going to say this. Anyway, apparently it's at George Mason. Wrote on her conspiracy blog, Congress clearly does have the power to regulate the court in a variety of ways. I don't disagree with that, but we're not talking about the type of regulation. Let's see what she has to say. Okay. Congress has the power to set the size of the court, true. Establish its pay, true, within limits. Okay. In other words, the courts have said the power of the purse, which the Congress has, it's the biggest power of all. You can't starve you out of business. You can get it down to where it can only just barely function, but you can't starve it out of business. But it does have that. It's true. Determine its staff and budget. That's under the payment clause. And with some exceptions, set the scope of its jurisdiction and decide cases. It can do that. All right. So by way of example, the Constitution provides that disputes between states, like if Georgia and say Florida are fighting over a waterway, you go straight to the Supreme Court. Do not pass go. You go straight to it. That's it. That's in the Constitution. All the other stuff, that's by certiorari. You have to ask the court. Now, Congress can change that tomorrow. They could say, hey, if it's a dispute between citizens of two separate states, you go right to the Supreme Court if they wanted to. And in fact, if they really wanted to do this the right way under the Constitution, what they do is say, hey, Judge Roberts, we'd like you to come down and talk to Congress. Oh, you're busy. You don't want to talk. Oh, okay. Yeah, well, we're sorry that you're busy. We got a bill. We're getting ready to say that all lawsuits between citizens of different states, original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. You'll know what busy is when we finish with that. You've got some time now. Well, that would be great. Will you come on down and talk about this? That's the way it would work in a rational system. Anyway, folks, let's go to her vlog and see if she does anything better. Again, we got to move on, but just take it my word for it. You can read it if you want, and I did that. That's just the Washington Compost article. All I did was click on it, and again, she talks about the same things. So these are so-called experts. Now, anybody who is reading that article, and I've always done this since I was 5 years old, I would have read that article and said, that doesn't say anything to me. All that says is you can determine how many, and you can determine how much to pay, and you determine what cases they rule on. It doesn't say you can tell them how to do it. It doesn't say, for example, you will determine and issue opinions within such and such a days. It does not say that you will excuse yourself from cases in this instance or that instance. It doesn't say any of that, right? Because once you start going down that road, it's pretty easy to see that I'm going to be able to control what you do. And that's obviously what this is all about. But anyway, I just wanted to cover that for you, just so you know there's nothing out there that when you start saying, hey, you know what, I listen to this podcast, and, you know, sometimes it's just fancy talk, but most of the time he has some pretty good things I listen to, and there's no power in the Constitution to regulate Supreme Court. Don't worry, you're not going to get your chin knocked off. You're going to know, you're absolutely right. And they're going to say, well, they can determine size. Yeah, they can impeach. And they can do some things with respect to staffing and funding. But that's it. They go past that, and they're violating the Constitution. And believe me, folks, if Larry Tribe had something, but here's the bigger point. I'm going to move on to Devon Archer, okay? What's the bigger point? What does it say when he is so unafraid to put that, not just think it, not just write it down, but tweet it out to his millions of followers? That idiocy. Literal idiocy. It says a lot. It says he's not worried about his people questioning what he says. I tell you to stand 6 feet, you stand 6. Oh, I've decided it's 8. You better do 8. And believe me, they will. Right? Thank you, sir. May I have another? That's what's going on there. And again, that's what scares me. Not that he's wrong. I'm fine with him being wrong. But the fact that he's not afraid to demonstrate that he has nothing. Anyway, all right. So, folks, here's the Oversight Committee from the Congress. And here are the takeaways from Devon Archer. So, folks, you need to know the backstory, what's going on here, folks. So we got into bed with Ukraine, and the reason we did is, and look, I'm a libertarian. You know that about me. I don't hide that. I don't think we have interest in just about anything. I mean, I'm one of those people that you call me World War I, you call me World War II. I'm like, yeah, we'll think about it. I just don't know. Yeah, I'm sorry y'all doing that, but yeah, that's really y'all's problem. No, I don't think they're going to be able to cross the oceans and come get me. Now, obviously with Japan, that might be a little bit different, but they weren't inviting us at that point to help with Japan, just FYI. So I'm going to admit I tend to err on the side of we don't need to be involved. Now, I understand reasonable minds can differ. A lot of other people are, they could say that's too isolationist. No. Of course, we got to help the Europeans, and the Nazis finish over there. They're going to come over here, which I don't know why they would, because they get all the Russian land. They don't really need our land, but whatever. So I just understand that to begin with. But what happened basically is, as the United Soviet Socialist Republics receded in the 80s, right? Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. When that happened, right, they started moving out of all these countries. They didn't want to leave, but they did. They couldn't afford it. Yada, yada, yada. All these countries come online. And there became a battle between us. We want them to be, markets that we can trade with and we can get cheap labor and et cetera, et cetera. And they like, no. You do your own thing, but you stay with us and don't get in bed with these USA people, right? And I've talked about this forever. Ukraine, and we now realize this, all these places where they're so-called giving aid and they're going and doing these things, we now know what goes on, okay? And folks, this is what I want you to understand how we've gotten here. I was against this also back in the day. I'm not giving you aid because I don't know where that aid's going. Let's just take it out of anything controversial. Let's just say that we were going to send to, pick any country, doesn't matter whatever country you want, some poor country, say Colombia. We're going to send, $5 billion down there. Now, you're going to tell me, oh, we're going to feed people, and we're going to educate them, and we're going to get health care for the women and all this stuff. The money gets in the account. How do I know where it's going to go? How do I know how they're going to spend that $5 billion? They're going to build a building with it. I mean, $1 billion is going to go to all the different buildings. Well, how do I know they're going to get 3 bids for each of them, and they're going to pay only the builder who's going to charge a reasonable rate of return to build that building? I don't have any idea. And if I had a mountain of people, I wouldn't be able to figure it out. So my whole idea is it's a bad idea. Let's find other ways to help them. I don't like giving you money because I can't trace the money, and people get this money. How do I know they don't just go, I tell you, here's what we're going to do. I got $1 billion for billions, right? For buildings, sorry. Here's what I'm gonna do. All right, I'm gonna spend actually $100 million. The other $900 million, we're just gonna swoop these up. Well, they'll catch us if we do that. Oh no, don't worry. We'll form LLCs and they'll have titles and they'll and then or even as innocent as we hired somebody legit. They overcharged a little bit, but then they right before they magically got this grant, they hired 100 people that are very connected and they get these jobs or they make $500,000 a year with benefits. Is that corruption? I mean, that's where all this money's going. And so we've gotten to the point now where they're so confident, just like Larry Tribe, they're confident to chart out the necessary and proper clause, which, as I proved to you, has nothing to do with the Supreme Court. Or by the way, just FYI, old Larry there, and believe me, he'll tell his students this. According to him, they didn't want to do anything. Oh, the necessary and proper clause, right? I mean, I remember when I was in college and still debating this stuff in law school, you'd have people come to you straight face. Oh, the Congress can do whatever they want. Well, it says right there, provide for the welfare. Well, yeah, that's like a preamble. It doesn't mean anything. If they can just provide for the welfare, they can do anything. Yeah, that's right. They can just do anything. So the same thing, the idea that they've got to the point now where they first started giving aid and there was lots of ways they could steal. Now it's got to the point nobody's watching, so they're not even pretending. Enter Hunter Biden, right? It's obvious now, and it's so obvious now. Like, my dad has been put in charge of Ukraine, and magically I'm on the board of a company at Ukraine. Well, what do you think? I mean, how in your face is that? They didn't even bother to sort of hide it at some company somewhere else where the Ukrainians had to bother to pay money to somebody in Austria who'd sit on a board at that company. Didn't even try. So anyway, here's what's going on. One more thing you need to know is that Devon Archer, I forget exactly who he is. I think he's related to the Careys or something, but all these folks run together. Anyway, turns out he was in business with Hunter. And this is kind of the game they were doing. He was using his leverage with being John Kerry's relative. I think he's his stepson or something. Hunter was using Joe, yada, yada, yada. And I'm not suggesting that John Kerry is corrupt. He doesn't need it because he has the Heinz money. But anyway, so here's what they had to say in Congress. We completed a transcribed interview with Biden associate Devon Archer. Archer's testimony confirms Joe Biden lied to the American people when he said he had no knowledge about his son's business dealings and was not involved. Critical takeaways. I'm going to give you a couple. But again, remember what Joe Biden said he was approached. Last week we covered it on the show. Somebody approached him on the trail. That's a lie, man, and you're lying. Get your facts straight. I don't know anything about my son's dealings. Really, Joe? I mean, think about that, folks. He flies over on Air Force Two hundreds of times. He goes to Ukraine. He's on the board. You think that doesn't come up in the flight over? I don't know how far it is over there, 10, 12, 13 hours. It doesn't come up at all. Oh, so Hunter, what are you going to do while we're in Ukraine? I just pick up hookers, do blow. Yeah, when do I have to be back, Pop? I'll be back. Yeah. We didn't talk about any business. I mean, it's an absurdity from the beginning. Now, of course, that's been proven, as you will see yesterday, to be untrue. And it's like, we always have to remember a lot of things in politics. One is our inner Andy Dufresne, time and pressure, right? Another one is Maya Angelou. The first time a person shows you who they truly are, believe them. I had a trial today. Again, it's settled, so I didn't have it. But there was going to be several places in the trial today where witnesses could tell a lie or not. And I had a feeling that both sides were going to tell some lies. I don't know. Didn't go forward. But I just, I'm not one of these people that's dumb enough to think my client can't have some liability out there. And I wasn't sure what was going to happen, but I was pretty sure that this was going to be a bench trial, that neither of them understood what they were dealing with. They thought it was like politics or like popular culture, and you can tell stupid lies and people just go, well, no. People, when in a trial, you lie, you lose. Almost, that's still the rule out there. People don't like it. Hey, I've given my time for you. I'm listening. Get to the point. Don't lie to me. These lies that the Biden people are running up the flagpole, this only happens in this crazy culture that we have now in politics. Now, I understand if this were Hollywood and who slept with who and who cheated on who and all that crap, that's one thing. We're now talking about politics, but that's why I started the show today with Michael Moore, and that's why I started the show today with Roseanne Barr, because we've turned politics into a frickin', culture show nonsense, and that's why you can get away with crap like this. Okay, anyway, here's continuing from the Oversight Committee. When Joe Biden was Vice President of the United States, he joined Hunter's dinners with his foreign business associates in person or by speakerphone over 20 times. Again, this is the point I made last week, right? Dude, you're not just an estranged son. You're not the granddaughter that on Friday the Bidens decided existed. You're not her, right? If you just said, well, I don't know what my granddaughter's, I have no idea. I don't even acknowledge she exists. She's not a Biden. I don't know. Okay, that's probably true. You don't know she's dancing or skating or I don't know what she does. Whatever she does, she does. I would buy that. Hunter, well, it's kind of hard when he lives at the White House and travels on Air Force Two with you all the time. That doesn't make any sense to me. Well, now we have proof that he had dinner with them and was on the speakerphone 20 times. Now, we're going to get to some of the defenders, and they're going to try to explain this away. But, folks, he just showed me who he is. You said you had no idea. All right, now I have proof you had dinner with him and you were on the speakerphone with him. Okay. Continuing, Devon Archer testified that the value of adding Hunter Biden to Burisma's board was, quote, the brand, and confirmed that then-President Joe Biden was the brand, and that the 20 phone calls were to sell the brand. Again, I've said this before. I've tweeted it several times. What business is Hunter in? All right, what business in? I know a lot of people try to do a false equivalence and say, What about Jared Kushner? I know what business he's in. He's in real estate. He has hedge funds. I'm not a fan of that either. I think all that crap should be eliminated, but that's what he does, right? And then set that aside. Forget about the fact that we don't know what business he's in other than the Joe Biden business, other than the selling influence business, right? He's a crackhead. He's not even going to be good at that business, right? That's why he got kicked out of the military. Anyway, in fact, Devon Archer admitted that Burisma would have gone out of business if, quote, the brand had not been attached to it. Right? All right, continues. In December 2015, Mykola Zelinsky, I can't pronounce these names, the owner of Burisma and some other name of somebody in Russia or in Ukraine, same difference. I don't speak left-wing languages. The executive of Burisma placed constant pressure on Hunter Biden to get help with D.C. regarding blah, 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 blah. All right, so folks, I'm not going to sit here and say we have proof positive that the Bidens are corrupt. I'm not going to say that. I don't know, but here's what we do know. We know that Joe Biden lied, and he lied multiple times. All right? Now, folks, we all know if this is Republican, they'd have done dug his grave, shot him in the head, and buried him by now. All right? But we know at least that they're lying. But let's try to hear the Democrats spin this. How are you going to spin this away? All right, well, here is somebody on MSNBC, and this was yesterday. And by the way, one other thing you need to know, this Devon Archer testimony was behind closed doors. Now, I'm not a fan of that. I mean, very few things, as you know, I would let you do behind closed doors, but it was. So you need to know that.
Kinds have been remarkably candid about saying, we don't have it yet. And even House Speaker McCarthy last week sort of pushed back against this impeachment inquiry momentum because he was like, look, we don't have evidence to go that far. And as far as Hunter Biden goes, there's no doubt. I mean, it's pretty clear, even those close to the Biden family suggest that some of his behavior was pretty unseemly. That doesn't make it illegal. And it also means we don't know the role that then Vice President Biden may have played. And it seems like, no, they haven't proven that he had anything to do with it. They haven't proven that he profited from this at all. Yeah, maybe.
See, so they're moving the goalpost. And again, just so you understand, I'm going to keep harping this because this is important. And again, the fact that I had a trial today, maybe I'm even a little bit more sensitive to it. But this whole, there's no evidence. What they mean is when you hear that, when you hear no evidence, translated in your brain, there's no conclusive evidence. There's no proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Because that must mean what they mean. There's no way they mean no evidence. Because the fact that the vice president was put in charge of Ukraine, just like Kamala's put in charge of the border, just like she's been put in charge of AI, right? Biden was in charge of Ukraine. And I'm going to play the tape. Remember the one? Well, I went over there and they were going to get $1 billion loan guarantee. And I told him, I said, that prosecutor, well, you don't have the power to do that. Oh, yeah? Call Brock. See what Brock says. And son of a bitch, he was fired. Remember that tape? That's because Biden was in charge of Ukraine. And he went over there. Now, do you think when he told people that, people go, well, I'd be done. I didn't think Biden had the kind of power. I always kind of thought of a little bit of a screw up. But yeah, we called Barack and he said, you better do what Joe says. If you don't do what Joe says, you're not getting that $1 billion loan guarantee, right? You think maybe that's the brand? And you think your son being on the board, and you think that's part of the brand? And you think if you've now got his partner saying, yeah, they were going to go to bankrupt until, oh, yeah. Now, is that evidence? Sure. Would I go to trial with it and expect to get a conviction? Probably not. But it's evidence. Would I open up an investigation? You bet your bottom dollar I would. 6 ways from Sunday. I mean, come on. This is and this guy goes up on a news. And again, understand this is meant for consumption. He's saying this. I don't think he believes it, right? This is not one of those AOC situations where I think he actually believes the fascism. But he's saying this, and this is what they're supposed to. So now understand they are relying on the MSNBC person to have forgotten what Biden was saying, right? This is like the 5th or 6th lie he's told. But again, we're not going to do the Maya Angelou thing. No. We're not going to believe him the first time or the second time, the third time, or the fourth time, or let it continue a little bit more. We got a couple more.
Guilty of turning a blind eye to some of his son's behavior. And we should put this in context. This is a time when Beau Biden, the president's other son, was ill.
Is he guilty of turning a blind eye? Really? He's on the plane with you, right? He all of a sudden he's got seriously? Biden lied. I didn't even know he was on the board until it broke in the news. Give me a break. Once you knew he was on the board. Folks, I know we're going to move off to Daniel Goldman because I got to get through this stuff, and it's just frustrating. You're the vice president of the United States, right? You are in charge of billions and, just an incredible amount of money. Your son's flying over there with you. Next thing you know, you find out, do you not think if it was your son, you wouldn't be like, hey, Hunter, on the phone now, what the F, man? Are you kidding me? Man, Barack's going to fire me on this. I can't believe you took a job. They think I'm over here telling these people that I control this, and if they don't fire prosecutors and they don't get rid of this person, they're not getting their loan guarantees, and they're using you to get to me. You stop with the crack, man. I mean, of course that's what happened, if they were honest, right? But again, we've gotten to the point where no one cares. No one cares about being honest. And this brings us to Daniel Goldman. I've told you about this guy. I've warned you about this guy, Jamie the Rascal Raskin. 2 terms ago, he ran, again, and this is a lot of these people, right? They're lawyers, and they're pretty good. They got the gift of gab. Come from somebody who has it. I know what I see it when I see it. He's pretty good on his feet. That type of person has a lot of value, especially if they lack compunction, right? They'll say whatever they need to say. So Daniel Goldman, he just got elected last term. He was on the impeachment inquiries, right? And he comes forward. His job is basically to gaslight or demagogue you. Every chance he gets, here's your job. Your job is I give you shit, right? And you got to make it into chicken salad. And this is just what you do every time. So here's him talking about what's going on. But before we get to that, this is him, one of the left-wing people, Goldman. I would urge Comer, rather than continue to send out misinformation about what transpired, put out the transcript. Daniel Goldman, he broadcast that on his Twitter feed, and that's why it caught my eye. See, this is the game Adam Schiff used to play, right? They'd put it in the skiff, and then she would go into the skiff, and Schiff would come out of the skiff and say, well, I mean, I saw undisputable evidence that there's a connection between Trump and Russia. Well, you had no way to know, right? Because he went in, and it's your word against his. And right now, it's the House Oversight Committee and Comer's word against Daniel Goldman and other people who are spewing nonsense. And he knows he's not going to release the transcript. And that's just the game they play. Now, you wouldn't be able to get away with that game if Adam Schiff had paid a price for lying to the American people for a couple years, but he didn't. Again, it's just a complete circus. Well, let's see what Daniel Goldman has to say.
The Republican head of the Oversight Committee issued this statement that reads in part, Devon Archer's testimony today confirms Joe Biden lied to the American people when he said he had no knowledge about his son's business dealings and was not involved. Joe Biden was, quote, the brand, end quote, that his son sold around the world to enrich the Biden family. In a statement a short time ago, the White House counsel's office said the testimony appeared to debunk Republicans' allegations. Democratic Congressman Dan Goldman was in the closed-door hearing. He joins.
All right, we're going to hear from Dan Goldman, but here's the point. Comer's not reaching. I'll give him credit for that. He says, look, we didn't get the bombshell we wanted. He didn't say, for example, I was there when Hunter came in with the briefcase. Well, what was in the briefcase, sir? I can't remember exactly. It looked like about $5 million, but it could have been $4 million, could have been $6 million. I'm not sure. Well, how do you know that? Well, I mean, Hunter was kind of thinking about taking some of it for some cocaine and some hookers, and I was like, dude, I wouldn't do that. The big guy, he wants his 10%, and he's going to count this. And right, he didn't get that kind of testimony. That would have been bombshell, right? I mean, of course, the Democrats, that would have been no evidence. That's not evidence, right? But they didn't get that. But they did get pretty conclusive evidence that Archer was aware that they were selling the brand, and the brand had a value because of how powerful Biden was. He's already admitted he was in charge of the Ukraine thing for the Obama administration, right? And it proved that. So that's evidence. That's evidence enough to get an impeachment inquiry. It's evidence. Anyway, here's Daniel Goldman, and he's going to play this game of, well, y'all can't back up, so I get to say whatever I get to say. And let's see what he has to say about what happened there. Take a listen.
Congressman Goldman, appreciate you joining us. You said there was no evidence of wrongdoing on the part of President Biden. Do you think it was appropriate for Hunter Biden allegedly to be selling even an illusion of access to his father?
Now, we all know if it were a Republican, the answer would be yes. But apparently, let's see if he'll accept again, that is a compromise position that, there's no proof that Biden was in on it, which I've already told you, I've given you the proof. It's very circumstantial, I'll admit it, but it's rock solid. You get an investigation everywhere for that. But, he was selling the illusion, right? Let's see what happens.
I don't think that's an accurate description, and I would urge Chairman Comer, rather than to continue to send out misinformation about what transpired in the...
Anyway, I play you that because, folks, and you can just look at his face if you're watching it right now. That is the face of a liar. And again, not even a good lie. Come on. Look, if you want to lie, give him a little bit of bait. Give him a little bit of plausibility here. Yeah, I mean, you could interpret it that way. That's certainly what Mr. Archer felt like. But, just because Mr. Archer felt that way doesn't mean it was so. He probably was jealous. He's a convicted. I mean, there's a lot of ways you can play that. Nope, not Goldman. Not going to give you 1 inch of what's going on. Anyway, folks, the big takeaway there is that it isn't going to matter. And again, I already told you yesterday they sent a letter on Saturday reminding him right? Hey, yeah, you're going to go talk to them Republicans, those rascally Republicans. Be careful. We still got a lot of power of you. So I'm sure he wasn't going to go in there guns a-blazing. Anyway, here's a story that came up over the weekend and almost made yesterday's broadcast, but didn't. Workers on Monday dismantled a giant X sign installed on Twitter's San Francisco headquarters after residents complained and the city issued a written notice for lacking proper permits, locals said. Folks, let me tell you what's going on here, right? This is the deep state, whatever you want to call them, right? This is the fascists, the communists, whatever you want. I don't care what you want to call them, the statists, the people that believe. This is just reminding, hey, Twitter, hey, I know we got poop everywhere and nobody wants and people are leaving in droves and businesses are leaving in droves, but we run this show, baby. You don't put up a sign. You don't even breathe unless we tell you. That's what that's about. They didn't have to make a big deal about that X. That's just showing you who's in charge. Never forget that, folks. And again, this is the type of thing that in a rational, I'm talking about when Democrats controlled everything, right? Let's say 1976, well, it would have been January 77 to January 1980, when Jimmy Carter was running the government and the Congress, right, was all Democrat. Even then, folks, nobody would have pulled this crap. Right? Twitter, they'd be like, oh, Twitter, you do a sign, please. You take that sign up, move that sign, do whatever you want. Just stay in San Francisco. We need those tax dollars. We need those jobs. Now, just think how petty the government has become. And you think that ain't happening in your town? Anyway, au contraire. All right. Fulton County District Attorney Fannie Willis has received racist threats and warned state employees to stay alert as Willis leads Georgia's investigation into Donald Trump. Now, there's something I want to talk about that, and it's coming up. We're going to listen to Lindsey Graham. We're going to listen to Lindsey. But before we listen to Lindsey, let me tell you what's going on here, folks. And again, this is how bad these people are. This is in your face, over the top. Fannie Willis is breaking the law. She's ignoring the rule of law. She is not doing what she was elected to do. She is instead fundraising. Right? That's the reason Trump filed a motion yesterday, which, by the way, was denied. Of course, it was denied because we're not following the rule of law. She's been campaigning on the fact that she was going to go after Trump. She's even doing it now, right, for next year's election, right? That's what she's doing. But anyway, nobody cares. Nobody cares. And by the way, don't you dare even dream of trying to check my power because it's racist. And it ain't racist. Oh, my God, there's a threat. There's no threat. That's completely manufactured and made up, but it's there by design. So, folks, one more thing I want you to understand what's going on with all this crazy stuff, okay? Then this is a dangerous part of January 6th. January 6th is a lot of things. January 6th is the rally that either was in a false flag or people got into it and made it into a riot or whatever it was. All right, so you've got some potential claims there. You can say Trump instigated it, right, or incited it is the term, which makes an exception from the First Amendment. You've got the whole false electors, and you got the whole disrupting a meeting of Congress. That's the meat of the bones there, folks. That's the real thing they're going to go after. In other words, you followed the Electoral Count Act of 1877 and the 12th Amendment to try to challenge Biden's certification. Yeah, we followed the 12th Amendment and the law passed by Congress in 1877 because we didn't think he should be certified because we didn't think he properly won the election. Yeah, you're going to jail for that. What do you mean? How do we go to jail for following the law? That, right, is a show trial. That's what's really going on. But I want you to understand, if you take the logic of that far enough, and it doesn't take much of a reach, folks. What have I told you tons of times? Or if you go to greatamericanmail.substack.com, I've got tons of articles about this up there, right? Well, didn't I tell you that 8 senators were going to file an objection in writing? And in fact, they started with Arizona. Didn't I tell you 137 Congress people? Guess what, folks? If you file a Georgia RICO Act about the January 6th challenge to Biden certification, oh, you 8 people that signed an objection, you also were in on the conspiracy to follow the law. You're coming down to Fulton County. You 137, you also were on the conspiracy. You're coming down to Fulton County. Oh, Jenny Thomas, wife of Supreme Court Justice, who corresponded with them, you're in on the conspiracy. Come on down, baby. See how it happens. Welcome to Georgia. See what the jury says. The jury lets you off. That's up to you or up to them, but I can't control that. That's how big this could theoretically be. Now, I don't think they're going to do it, but take a listen.
Be selective prosecution. So President Trump has...
This is Lindsey.
To defend himself. I think politically it probably makes him stronger in the primary. If the special counsel indicts President Trump in Washington, D.C. for anything related to January 6th, that will be considered a major outrage by Republicans, because you could convict any Republican of anything in Washington, D.C., and I fear that's where this is going.
All right, folks, that's what he's worried about. Right. In other words, it's one thing you go after Trump, right? Because y'all have made Trump a pariah and he's the orange man bad and all that stuff. But what about the rest of us? You know, and I don't remember honestly if Lindsey was on that, but I do know he was on the call to try and quote unquote find the votes and all that stuff. So I'm going to tell you right now, I do not think, believe me, they're crazy. They're not quite this crazy yet. I do not think you will see them try to bring in anybody beyond Trump. It will be Trump. The electors will be brought in, all the people that were supposedly false when they're not fake electors, they're alternate electors. I think they'll be brought in. I don't think they've quite reached the stage of crazy to where they're going to actually bring in senators and Congress people or, governors of people of other states. But I just want you to understand that's what he's talking about. And if you follow the logic, it doesn't take very far to get there. Now, believe me, if we continue on this path, if we continue on this descent, that's where we'll be. I mean, and you're pretty bad shape when that happens. So anyway, we'll see. All right, folks, Republicans against Trump, another left-wing source. All my shows pretty much from them. 91% of Fox News viewers said they believe Trump has, quote, not committed crimes, according to a New York Times Siena poll. It's almost as if Fox News doesn't cover real news. Well, again, yep, there you go. I've already told you why they don't believe it, because it's not true, but it is what it is. All right, here's Maggie Haberman, also of the New York Crimes. More Republicans say Trump committed crimes, but they still support him. Let me tell you what's going on here, folks. Fake polls to basically try and show them that we're the real news, and what other people believe, they're just crazy. I mean, how could you believe at this point in time that Trump, right, didn't commit crimes? I mean, the whole power of the state is against him. And this is all part of the election interference that's going on. And this is a 24/7, right, 365 operation. That's all. You're going to hear a lot about this New York Times poll. I'm going to get to it in a minute when I cover the state of the race, because here we go. Same poll. President Biden is heading into 2024 presidential contest on firmer footing than a year ago, with his approval rating inching upward and once doubtful Democrats falling into line behind his reelection bid. Again, a New York Times Siena poll found, right? Okay, this is all designed to pump them up. This is all designed to get them all rabid, right, and ready to go to the polls and make sure that wascally Trump doesn't get reelected, okay? They have no idea what the news is, right? According to the New York Times, Republicans are just as crazy as ever. I mean, they don't believe that Trump's a criminal. I mean, we've been telling you reliably that Trump's a criminal, right? He's been indicted, so let me remind you, if his indictments, you're a criminal. Setting aside that you should ever question your government, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And don't worry, we're in good stead here. Don't worry. I know people are claiming Trump's popular and he's going to get the thing, but don't worry, we got everything where it needs to be. So let's try to go to the facts. And I'm going to, by the way, this is the last story. You're pretty much caught up to date now. But let me back up and let you know a couple things. First of all, nobody knows what's going to happen in November of 2024. Nobody. Anybody tells you that they're lying to you. We are, as part of the corruption and just this cancerous thing that has eaten up our environment, this is the kind of thing I would have laughed in your face just 5 years ago, to be looking at polls now trying to predict what's going to. We don't know. I mean, a lot of things matter. And the least of it is all this Trump criminal trouble, which I think is actually going to be less important than you think. What's going to be a lot more important is what the economy does. I'm still betting. I'm still shorting the market. I think we're very close to a recession. All right. Or if we're not in one, right? But who knows? So I think we're going to need to be in a recession, and I think anybody named Trump or any other Republican can win. But I don't know, right? And I'm not going to run a stupid poll now to tell you what's going to happen later. But let's just always remember, when you see these things, take a breath, know that polls can be manufactured, they can be manipulated, but then also, here's a good thing, rule of thumb to do: go to the general election and go to an aggregate. I'm going at Real Politics here. You go to the 538 blog, they've got one. I think the New York Times has one, which I don't know why they have a aggregator when they've got one of their own, but there we go. And this includes that same poll in here right now. According to that poll, right, let's go back just to show you how this works, right? President Biden is heading into the presidential contest on firmer footing than a year ago. And they don't really say a lot, but you know what that's designed to do. That's designed to convince their readers that he's doing better than he would a year ago. Well, I don't know, where was he a year ago? I don't remember, right? But let's go to that same poll, has Biden and Trump registered voters 43-43. Let me translate that for you. First off, you really need likely voters, and this used to be something. This is something that has changed, right? Since I've been broadcasting, it's changed since I've had my Twitter feed. Used to be, as you went from registered voters to likely voters, you edged more Republican. That is no longer true, folks. No longer true. And you listen, you got to give it credit to the Democrats because they now get their people out there and they get them out there and they vote. But so I don't know which way it would go if you went from registered to likely. But I can tell you this: Biden's got to win by about 3 points to win. So when I look at that Times poll, you know what that tells me? Trump wins. Now that's Trump. I don't know where DeSantis is, and I'm not going to look. But I'm going to tell you right now, even after everything they've done, they are not getting the results they want. Another thing to do this while we look at an aggregator, the aggregator has Biden up plus 0.8, which again, he loses. He's got to win by about 3 points. He won last time by about 3.5, and but about 50,000 votes over 7 states did he win, right? Just by the narrowest of margins. Now, if you looked at the popular vote, which is what Democrats want to do, he won by like 7 million votes. Doesn't sound close at all, does it? Right? So anyway, just keep that in mind when these folks are trying to propagandize you. But anyway, you are all caught up to date with all the news of the day. And if you like this live stream /podcast, I hope you tune back in tomorrow.